This whole industry is pretty much watered down. And see, a lot of people think that a lot of this organization and industry, that people are just oblivious to what's going on right in front of their faces. Hollywood do things right in front of your faces, and none of you say nothing about it. You don't do anything about it. You just move on as business as usual. So, for instance, you have Spike Lee's, you have Denzel Washington, you have all of these people, Byron Allen, guys who are billionaires and multi-millions of dollars, Samuel Jackson, Morgan Freeman, all of these guys with hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And you guys have not come together and said, let's control our distribution. Let's get our own company where we can stream our movies directly to direct to consumer. All you multi-million dollars have not built your own studios, have not gotten out there. And you're like, how is this possible? How come we haven't done this? What is wrong with us? Why didn't we go out and acquire all of this that was there to be gotten? Doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't we go that route? It's because they couldn't go that route. See, here's the thing. This is what they don't tell you. Hollywood is not going to let you do that. The film industry is 88% Caucasian. The television industry is 79% Caucasian. So what's the common denominator? Right. So blacks could never really get into film and do their own thing. So blacks were making their own movies. And white people didn't care. They was like, cool, let them make their own movies and take a cheap budget. Fine. But they were, even the black exploitative movies that they was having a black director, they were moving in different ways. And the studio that they still use were not a black studio, it was a white one. Because there wasn't any black studio. They weren't going to let you prosper. So there's no way or no avenue that Denzel and none of these guys could ever go if they linked up with their money. All distribution is going to have to come back through them. They know it, so they control the show. They have to approve your content. They have to approve your message. And all these churches out here are ran by Hollywood, especially in California. California church, you might as well forget about it. They run all of it. See, a California church gonna do it much different. See, a California church, they basically work for the celebrity who's a big donor, and they use his star power to draw in other consumers and people that might want to buy into the fact that, hey, look what we got here. We got a superstar in the house. Don't you want to come over here and join this church? Look who we got. And then you start changing what's a sin and what isn't a sin. There's a lot of problems like that in Hollywood right now. They go to these money-driven churches, and then they just saying basically for each sin, your sins, we won't judge you. A church that don't judge you, that's crazy. Never seen that before. Yeah. This is part of their game to control the avenue. Like I told you, Harvey was evil, but a necessary evil. He was a necessary evil. Because Harvey Weinstein would give you $10 million to go make your movie. Nobody else cares now. Now that avenue is closed. All of it, since Harvey went down, all black films have taken a dive. Because they were all glued to Harvey Weinstein's approval. So all the stuff they were accusing Harvey of, right? He was so powerful, he was able to have a good piece written about him. He acted like he couldn't walk, like he just fell off the map, and he just all of a sudden lost the ability to walk. He's got crutches, and he's been wheelchaired around. Now, I don't know what part of the strategy that is, but for him, it could work because he has a ton of money. Doo-doo-dumb dollars. Now, ideals were changed, situations were changed, and things started to take its turn. Right? Well, let's take a look at Hollywood darkest secrets. Ben Affleck, right? Affleck used to date Jennifer Lopez, right? We all know that. Jenny from the block. Well, Jenny from the block Jenny from the block was with Ben and was trying to be with Ben later on, but early in his career, like 2006, while she was jumping on Puff Daddy's bones, you know, and doing all the things that she was doing. Once they broke up, you know, and Ben started moving on with his life. For a while, he had dated Gwyneth Paltrow before J-Lo. Now, Gwyneth Paltrow is the goddaughter of Steven Spielberg. And Steven Spielberg looked at her as like his daughter, basically. And she went on a vacation with Ben Affleck and Steven Spielberg. They all went on vacation. And Steven Spielberg's son was in a pool. Affleck came outside, he was dressed, and the son came and pushed Affleck in the pool. He thought it was funny. Affleck got out and cussed him out and grabbed the kid and slung him in the pool. The boy cried, and he got up and he told his father, who is Steven Spielberg. And the kid was humiliated. He was absolutely humiliated. So now that the kid is humiliated, you know, he's been ran through ringer. Everybody knows what's going on. You know, he doesn't want to see anybody or Ben Affleck ever again. He's embarrassed. So Ben Affleck was blacklisted immediately before his career could even start. So he was Man About Town and all these other films. This is why they didn't have a push. So Spielberg said, you know, I don't want anybody working with Ben Affleck. And if you do, you ain't going to be working with me. You know, and he'd have been willing to get by it if Affleck wasn't such a prick in his words. So we'll have to see how it plays out, but that's how that went down. Now, Gwyneth Paltrow. Let's go back to Gwyneth. Let me tell you about Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow is always been and will always be an overrated actress. Now, the thing about her that makes her unique in this instance is because her whole life is determined on small factors. Like everything has to align in a row in order for her to feel safe. And she don't feel safe unless she's having all of these miracles happen for her at the same time. Gwyneth Paltrow is not really a great actress. She has a hard time playing emotional depth. And, you know, she comes off as a snob. A know-it-all snob. And people told me this is why every man has left Gwyneth Paltrow. She controlled everything. She went overseas so that she could have a baby. She's like, I need to find me a man overseas so I can have a baby with. Why was that so important? Well, Gwyneth Paltrow is in a cult. So the code tell you to do something, you do. That was just all to it. Now, well, the thing is that there's so many different elements at play. It's hard to find just one thing. Everybody say that all the time, like, man, if I just had this one thing, I'll be great. It's like, it's hard to find the one element you're good at. Steven Spielberg blacklisted Ben Affleck for years. All because he threw his son in some water. So one movie they were getting ready to do, and the guy had told Affleck, shook his hand, and said no. And that guy went off on him. So anyway, yeah. One of and Ben ended up having some problems and ended up splitting, but it was Ben going through a lot with his now relationship with Jennifer Lopez, which is interfering with the fake relationship he has. And she was just going along with his demands until she realized that I don't have to listen to him. Once she realized she didn't have to listen to him anymore, he was doomed because there was nobody else that was going to listen to him. Uh-huh. Oh yeah, Affleck was blacklisted, right? So the guy said, "I want to work with you anyway." He says, "I want to work with you anyway." He said, "All right, you can work for me, but this is what's required." You know. So the guy had a dinner, and he's like, "I'm taking this girl out to dinner. I really like her." And his buddy was like, "Oh, okay, that's what's up." You know, but he worked for his buddy, and all hell hits the fence because that guy is like, you know, let's do what the wife says. You know? So when he played Kingpin, you know, he had to start going into a weight loss camp. I know people don't never see that though. They never see that. The only thing that people see is their own ambitions. So Steven Spielberg says no studio would back Ben Affleck. Nobody will touch his deal. Mm. Wow, they didn't give us the green light yet. I was about to say, homie, man, you the only one getting screwed here. No green light. So all the elements were in place, meaning that everybody who has something to say or hate it or what have you, like all of those people were dealt with. No, Spielberg was just known for burning something all the way down to the ground. So the director is like, man, Affleck really wants this part. This guy came over here to the studio and he got a big, gigantic reel from to read. You know, and I mean, he went through like a whole layer feature. Like, I'm gonna make a movie, and the movie gonna be like a mini. You know, like we're gonna make this movie. It's gonna be like a mini soundtrack. You know, like a musical and stuff. It's gonna be great. So that never materialized, of course. But Affleck did his movie, so he told Steven Spielberg, the director, said, I'm going to stick with Ben because he came over. Ben Affleck personally came over there, looked him in his eye, and said, you're not doing this movie with me because I threw Steven Spielberg's kid into the water, right? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I made the decision because I had to cut some people off. He was like, you made this story up about him throwing me into the water. Come on, lady. What's up, OG? OG Ashley. So, anyway, it's a tricky business. So Gwyneth Paltrow had to break up with Ben Affleck because she was going to lose support from Steven Spielberg. So Steven Spielberg had totally torpedoed this man's career for years. Then in 2006, he loved the story. He couldn't wait to do it. Affleck and Spielberg told him, "You want to?" He was like, "Man, I need Ben for this movie." And he says, "You want to make the movie with Ben? Go ahead. You can make the movie with Ben." He was like, "All right, cool. All right." I thought he was gonna be upset. The next day, Steven Spielberg pulled out of the project. First of all, he suckered this guy into the project altogether. Steven Spielberg said, "Man, I like your work. I want to do something with you." And the director's like, "Oh man, this is wonderful. Great. I got Steven Spielberg, the man." So it was an unlimited check with Steven Spielberg on what they was going to get for the movie. Nobody's telling Steven Spielberg what he could do. If he says he's making a movie, the studio doesn't say, "Okay, well, all we got to give you is this." They say, "All right, well, go on and make your movie, Steven." The money's not even an object. So you let that sink in. Then you turn around and you see the other levels. Oh yeah. So now, oh yeah, these are all true stories. I don't tell you no lies. This is what really went down. Now, here's the deal. After all of this was done, the whole narrative changed because Yeah, everything changed after that because now, soon as he said he was gonna do. Uh-oh. Okay. He said he was gonna do the film, right? Right when he says he's gonna do the film, next thing you know, Spielberg pulls out and said, "You know what? I got some good news and bad news. The bad news is I can't do this film the way you want. This film is coming out in a different way, and I just don't want to put out that kind of film right now. But I think I think the film should be made, and I think you should direct it." So he said, "Oh, wow, great." Because he was just going to produce it and star in it. He wasn't going to be the director. He wanted Spielberg to direct it. Spielberg doesn't really direct anything anymore. He's just like a consultant. Steven Spielberg haven't directed nothing since like the 80s or 90s. Steven Spielberg is the biggest story stealing hack in Hollywood right now. And I hate to say that about him, but these are the Hollywood secrets y'all don't know anything about. And I'm finna tell you right now. So finally, this guy says, okay, Steven Spielberg's gonna direct the movie. I mean, he's gonna produce it. His company called the next day, DreamWorks, and they said, all right, we got a budget for you, and the budget is now 18 million when they had no budget before. So they had no budget before then. Now they have a budget. It was like, man, we had no budget. Now there's a budget of 18 million. And it was like, man, I don't even know. Now I really gotta, work and do some things because now we don't have a way to make the movie the way it needs to be made. And that's why he wanted Spielberg to do it, because he knew all the digital effects and things that he wanted to have done for the film. He was like, damn, I can't get it now because Affleck is not involved. I mean, because Steven Spielberg is pulled out. So Ben Affleck came to him about starring in the movie. So that's why he had chose Ben anyway. They met, they watched each other's movies, and they hand shook, and he said, I want to be in this film. And he said, okay, great. So Spielberg said, look, his last 3 movies bombed. I don't want Affleck in this movie. So he told him about Ben and throwing his son in the water. The last 3 movies bombed, and Hollywood is through with him. He's arrogant. He's all over the place. He's not ready for Hollywood. So Ben, that's what I said. Ben went and got him when he said, hey, I want to stick with Ben. And then he says, you want to use Ben? No problem. Then use Ben. He said, oh, okay, great. So Spielberg told him, go and use Ben. And right after that, the next day, the studio, DreamWorks, pulled out and said, well, DreamWorks they don't want to, do them film anymore. So now they had to go another route to another studio to get the film made. And now that new studio, instead of the 18 million now, he's got like 13.5 million to make the film. So now they went from like a $30 million budget to an $18 million budget to now the movie's basically 13.5. So now the whole movie got to be made cheap. And then Ben Affleck's going to be in it. So the movie comes out. It goes basically straight to video. No one really sees it. The studios are not going to put it out because Spielberg doesn't like Affleck. Right? So all of this goes down, and it goes down in a fashion that people didn't believe. So Ben became pretty much a director himself more than an actor. His acting was pretty much in subplot, but after doing Gone Baby Gone, he started to bounce back, and then he beat Spielberg and got an Oscar for Argo. That brought him back to the prominent, to the light. So Ben and Gwyneth split. Then he ends up going out with Jennifer Lopez, and he didn't want to break up with Jennifer Lopez. Hollywood made him do it, or he was going to ruin his career. So he did it, and then he got with Jennifer Gardner. They hooked them guys up in the movie when they did Daredevil. And once Daredevil bombed, they all blamed Affleck because it was just a teardown scenario with them. If you don't do what we say, we destroy your career. End of story. So they had to navigate that just to get back to the essence of things. So yeah, because they control the studios. So they all have their dirty little secrets that they keep. Steven Spielberg has been taking stories that are out there, and basically he'll sit back and say a Steven Spielberg film, but he's not directed it. They'll have another director in there. He'll produce the film, and he knows it's a hit. He knows a good story when he sees it. Like when they see, like, he hasn't made anything good since like E.T. and like all the stuff he did was in like the 80s or 90s, but his movies weren't really that good. He started taking other people's stories, other people's ideas and projects, and saying, hey, that's a good one, I like that, oh, that's gonna be a hit, come make it with my studio's gonna make it. And they be like, Steven Spielberg did great. Steven Spielberg haven't done a damn thing. So he just walked around on the set, and that was that. He did the same thing with J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams was one of the guys that was under him, who was doing all of the work, and now J.J.'s doing his own thing away from there, but Steven was taking all the credit for it. George Lucas was doing all this work for Star Wars. Who was getting some credit? Coming in there, Spielberg's walking around. So it's not saying that the guy is not a great filmmaker. It's just that sometimes some directors, they become dated. The success and style of the films that they've done have become dated, and it doesn't translate over into this new era and new years. They can't make anything new and relatable to the people of today, so they have to ride coattails. It's like James Cameron. James Cameron movies are always number one because it's a system of him buying the movie to number one. Okay, I was there. Not everybody was watching the last Avatar like that for it to be up there in the, no. There was no real interest on social media about the last Avatar movie. So for it to be up with the highest grossing films of all time, that means people are running back and back to the theater to see it. No, that's in this day and age, that was impossible. They were inflating those numbers. Like Oppenheimer having all these older people coming in there to see it. Now that one was doing some real traffic. But still, none of the traffic that everybody else was looking at. Yeah, Gwyneth doesn't have to audition for a role. They just give her a role. You want Gwyneth Paltrow? No problem. Then she's able to have a career. No one bothers her. She's got all this money anyway. She doesn't have to act. All her family has been around Hollywood for years. And then she's like, I never knew I would be an actress. Well, you're like a B-rated actress on my list. She's really not that great of an actress. There's people that can act rings around her, and I'm just like, wow. I just really can't believe it. Gwyneth Paltrow, just her emotional range, she's very cold. She's a cold person. So her and Affleck being together made a lot of sense because those two it's just like they were meant to be, you know? So when they split up because Steven Spielberg said split up, she was not gonna not do what Steven Spielberg said. He was the money. He don't bite the money. Whatever the money it says, that's what you better do. Well, people largely took advantage of situations that they shouldn't have. For example, there were a lot of people taking advantage of there's a lot of people taking advantage of the opportunities that was provided to them by the others and not by old Hollywood. Because what Hollywoods do is they throw all these big parties and masquerades, and everybody, they welcome you with open arms, and they stab you in the back and act like they don't know you, like you're a pariah to them. See, during the war, nobody was going to the movies. Back when Trumbo was making and writing all these movies that were winning Best Picture, people had looked to the movies to be an escape, right? A getaway from the war. But it was all this communism going on. So everybody was like a communist. So the film industry was shook up because all the writers they talked about was communists, and the government was shutting them down and blocking them from work. So films weren't being made, budgets wasn't going out, and people had to write under different names. Trumbo couldn't have his name attached to it because he was, he was the writer of these movies, but he couldn't get the credit for his awards because they had listed him as a communist. So all of the black exploitation films came in and saved Hollywood. Now, they said, well, Black Hollywood saved Hollywood and we're supposed to get a spot. Yeah, but who made these films? They put the films out. Hollywood said, hey, the black people they're not viewed as communists. They're just putting together films and putting them out. And people were going to the movie theaters to see them, and they're saying, hey, they're turning up profits. People are actually going to see these movies. And it wasn't just black people, it was white people, it was everybody. So all this thing about blacks don't sell internationally, no, they know they sell internationally. They just don't want to promote blacks internationally. It's always been a myth. Not rooted in reality. Well, the absolute best people that you could think of that have done these things and tried have failed. Meaning that they don't want to come out and do any of these activities you're talking about. Mm-mm. Well, they were supposed to get a yeah, they were supposed to get a distribution line for all these black exploitation films. They were supposed to have their place in Hollywood, and once the money came back in, all those actors, Fred Williamson, Pam Grier, all of those actresses and actors were supposed to get some sort of, you know, a, yeah, some sort of access to real world, the big budget movies. They were supposed to get their break and be used in other films that wasn't black exploitative. So, for instance, the lady that played in Truck Tucker, she was got the role in Star Trek. Yeah, she was in Star Trek. Oh, played Aurora. She was in Star Trek. No. Well, when you go in different directions, let's say like when you go into different situations or different zones, things that don't usually matter when people say it matters the most. Yeah, situations change. What used to be what used to be something turns out to be nothing the majority of the times. But Hollywood is a game and a place rather that if you're not playing their game, they force the rules and they like, oh, you ain't gonna do what we want you to do. Oh, we got the power to shut you out. Then you're out in the cold. Then you don't get any work for years. Prescott Bush, the grandfather of George Bush, and then the son of George Bush, was a stark racist. He he put money into films and put money into, he funded Hitler, actually. So these are common facts that you could look up for yourself. Yeah, it's like you're stuck in a bad bad trip. So anyway, Prescott Bush was funding movies and films, helping his political, you know, rivals. Hmm. Oh yeah, he was a bonesman. Yeah, he definitely was. Now, all of these people who were good shepherds and they all followed a code and did what they had to do, they controlled Hollywood's elite. And they had these privileged parties that you would go through and you can be accepted. But there was a certain level or hierarchy that you wouldn't be accepted to go through. Like the type of budget that would be pushed for a movie, even though the film was good, they didn't care about it being good. They wanted to spend big money on a movie that would flop than to let your movie be a success. Because if your film is a success, when it's pretty much color driven, even though they're making money off of it, this is not the message they want to send. If they want to send an African American movie, you know, then hey, this is what we need to see. You know, Boys in the Hood, coming of age story. They loved it because it was about black people in a situation where there was violence around them constantly, and they grew up around some violence, and you had one black kid doing great, trying to go to school, while the rest of his people are in the hood getting down and dirty. And they wanted to promote that. But they didn't want to promote a movie with black people being successful. Eddie Murphy had the first black romantic comedy that was ever put out. Can you imagine that? Boomerang, that came out in the 90s, was the first black romantic comedy movie ever made. How ridiculous is that? That's how much they didn't want to put blacks on television. And I told you, 88% of all the film industry is Caucasian. 88%. Yeah, and in television, it's 70 or 79% all Caucasian that run pretty much television. So there is no fairness or parity. Yeah, Furious Styles was telling the truth about what was actually happening in the neighborhood. See, the major problem in these industry driven films is that Hollywood acts like there can only be one of you. And if there's one of you, then you guys got to battle it out to see who's the one. When you're black, but when you're white, there's all this room for you. Now, why is it that when you know that there's plenty of black people in Hollywood that other black people would support, and there's no problems, right? Plenty of them. They don't want it. So the answer was to start your own studio. Since the Hollywood Shuffle came out in 1987 by Robert Townsend, when Eddie Murphy had just broke through, and the early 80s, he went from Saturday Night Live to 48 Hours, Trading Places, and then Beverly Hills Cop. And he's the biggest thing in the world. And here it is, 1987. Robert Townsend, who's a guy who's been working with Eddie Murphy and writing for him, doing comedy shows and helping him with the raw stand up. And Robert's from Chicago, and he's trying to go out, and he's an actor as well. He has acted in movies in Hollywood, and now he's trying to get his big break. He could do drama, he could do anything. And he's got all these ideas, and he's very creative. And he just decided to write about all of his experiences of trying to get jobs in Hollywood. So he basically used the Robert Townsend system where he maxed out his credit cards to make his movie, which was Hollywood Shuffle. So he made it for less than like $60,000 to make the movie. Everybody just wanted to be in it. And because of it, the film just did well and it was incredible. But an element was brought in there and they made jokes out of it. But in the reality of it was really mocking the ridiculousness of the facts that actually take place and how Hollywood treats blacks. When he goes in for the audition and he runs into the lady and she says, "We're looking for an Eddie Murphy type." Now, why would she say an Eddie Murphy type? Because that's exactly what they were looking for. There could only be one. And everybody who was black going in for auditions for these movie roles, if you were a black character, they were looking for a comic relief or an Eddie Murphy type. Hmm. Yeah. So Hollywood is a very fickle place. So they'll make it seem like you have to have one, and the only one another one can come is they have to battle each other, and then they have to compete, and then one will be hot and the other one's be not for a while, and everybody will jump on the bandwagon and reverse it like a seesaw. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I know. Tell me about. Well, I'm gonna get up out of here. Appreciate y'all time. I'm gonna hit y'all up later. One.